When you view an infotext, webinar, or movie, you do so with 4 caveats. First, you are agreeing to the terms posted at the webpage listed on this slide. Second, our lawyers want you to know that what infotext presents is often time-dated or about new trends, regulations, or guidance, and therefore we cannot provide this material with any warranty whatsoever. Thirdly, material provided with infotext webinars and movies is copyrighted. You keep the copyright to material customized to your organization, but Infotext reserves the right to use the material in other engagements and boilerplates. See our Transfer of Copyright Agreement at the webpage listed in the slide. Finally, those who view our webinars or movies may be added to an email mailing list. If you do not wish to receive notice of additional educational opportunities, please accept our apologies and please opt out at the webpage shown on the slide.
Hi, Dan Hadaway here, Managing Partner of Infotext, and I have the pleasure today to introduce one of our regular speakers, Adam Reynolds.
Hi, I'm Adam Reynolds and I'm the lead non-technical auditor here at Infotext. Thank you for joining us today for this movie.
We will be diving into the annual report to the board and what to expect in that report. This webinar is intended for those not yet familiar with this report or those looking to make sure their reports are including the necessary information. Today's agenda includes reviewing the FFIEC's requirements for board reporting, a look at our standard boilerplate for the annual report to the board, and then combining those two to show you what you should be expecting to see in what we call the Annual Information Security Report to the board. It may take a slightly different name at your institution, but what we're talking about here specifically is the annual report to the board that describes the overall status of the information security program and material matters related to that program. And of course, the requirements are a good place to start as we travel down the road to what to expect, because these requirements are what the report is trying to fulfill, at least from a compliance perspective. And these requirements come out of the FFIEC's Information Security IT Examination Handbook, published in September of 2016. So what we see here is a requirement to describe the overall status of the information security program and related materials, as well as 6 specific bullet points the FFIEC wants addressed. The first 2 are designed to show the risk management process from assessment to response. The board needs to understand in general how we are arriving at our risk results, what threats we are protecting against, and what steps we have taken to address them, really focusing on the moderate to high risk items, and this will typically take the form of a summary of the IT risk assessment or GLBA risk assessment. The third item is vendor management or third-party management, reviewing current arrangements for risk issues, as well as discussing changes in vendors. It's good practice to inform the board of all new vendors, as well as those you have ended your relationship with in the past year. That's definitely information they should know. But in discussing existing arrangements, that discussion can be based on risk. We are trying to inform the board as to the current risk presented by third parties. We're not going to include our landscaping company. We want to know about the vendors that present availability risk, the services that, if could not be provided by a third party, would impact our ability to continue operations, and the vendors that have access to or store our most sensitive information or customer information. And these issues will be found through their vendor due diligence reports typically. It will present how the vendor risk ranks against other vendors, what information was reviewed for that vendor, such as financial statements or SOC 2 reports, and most importantly, any missing controls not reviewed or findings from their external audits, and what steps were taken to address them. The next item we see here is the results of testing. We can't know our program is working as intended, or if there was anything we might have missed, unless it's tested. And this bullet point is expanded upon in the following slide, where I will discuss it in further. The fifth item is a summary of breaches or violations in the past year. Hopefully there won't be much here, but mistakes happen, and there are, of course, malicious actors out there. So when there is an information security breach, or we're in violation of a particular law or regulation, we need to see a summary of these events included for the board's review. And then finally, This is where we can enhance our existing program, recommendations for updates to the program. This section out of the Information Security Handbook follows the previous slide and provides examples of what type of testing results should be included in the report. From internal assessments and reviews, internal and external audits, third-party reviews of the program, and other reviews designed to assess the adequacy of the program. There may be a number of different internal audits, assessments, or reviews included to meet this requirement, but two important external tests that you will see included are the IT audit and examination reports. And those are the requirements as stated by the FFIEC. Moving on to our boilerplate annual information security report to the board. First, before diving into the report, let me show you the topics addressed and lay out how our boilerplates work. All areas needing customization or consideration are in red. Sections in blue are merely instructions or additional information for knowledge purposes and should be removed. Sections in green are examples, and sections that are in brown are optional sections according to our definition of best practices. These sections may be removed if they do not match your needs. There are a number of items in here, kind of housekeeping items, that I'm going to skip over when presenting the boilerplate report. But first, let me address them here. The introduction gives an overview of the board responsibilities, which, to summarize, includes overseeing the development, implementation, and maintenance of the information security program. The board must hold senior management responsible and accountable. The board must review reports on the effectiveness of the information security program, and the board must approve the information security program, plans, and policies, as well as approve the written report on the effectiveness of the information security program annually. The report we're discussing now. That's why we see that signature block and approval of report towards the bottom of this list. As mentioned, the items in red will need customized to your institution. In this case, we call our program our IT governance program, but it may be called the information security program or have a different name at your institution. The two items in red at the bottom come from our risk analysis executive summary. This would typically be a summary of your IT or GLBA risk assessment, satisfying the requirements for including the risk assessment process and risk management and control decisions we saw earlier. This is, of course, an executive summary of the overall risk analysis document, highlighting only those areas of highest risk. The board of directors are, of course, invited to review the risk analysis documentation in its entirety, but this document escalates high and critical risks accepted by management on behalf of the board of directors and communicates potential mitigation plans. It's really meant to make sure the board of directors is aware of the top risks facing the institution and what is being done about them. So, let's take a look at our boilerplate annual information security report to the board. And here we see the start of our boilerplate annual information security report to the board. Scrolling past our standard boilerplate language, where again we mention what colors of text mean what, the cover page, the contents, which was covered in the slides before, and the introduction, which was mentioned before as well. And now we get really into the heart of the document, starting with the status of the overall information security program. On this page, we see where we would present the overall status of the program, starting with updates to last year's report. It then documents the risk assessment was renewed for this year and presented to the board in the risk analysis executive summary. It then presents the changes proposed to address those risks from the risk assessment. This page is where we meet the requirements for presentation of the overall status of the program. The next section, Return on Investment Issues, is a section you may or may not see. We are seeing some banks now requiring a discussion on this topic in the report. If your institution does require that, of course, this is where you would see it. We then move on to the next two sections regarding third parties, or vendor management. These two sections are where we discuss new vendor arrangements, as well as the discussion of existing service providers and the due diligence review that was performed to bring any risk issues to the board's attention. We then see the summary of security breaches and findings, as well as the summary of audits, audit results, and mitigation processes. These are both the areas where we would see summaries for security breaches and incidents in the previous year, as well as results of external audits and examinations, as well as internal tests such as, the example here, internal Nessus scanning. This is followed by any recommendations for change to the program. We would typically see changes here based on items found in the previous sections, except those changes that were based on the risk assessment which were presented as part of the overall status of the program. And then finally, the last page, not including boilerplate language, is where we see the ISO sign off on the report and the board approving the report, documenting who made the report and that it was officially approved. As this boilerplate has shown, we reviewed the overall status of the program, reviewed the risk assessment and control decisions, changes to third parties, results of testing, security breaches and incidents that have occurred over the past year, and then recommendations for changes, satisfying all of the FFIEC's requirements. Now, to summarize what to expect in the annual information security report to the board. First, let me ask and answer a question. Why is this report important? Boards are becoming much more involved in information and privacy security. No one will dispute that. And as they are outside of IT, there can be gaps in understanding between the board and the information security team. Now, of course, the board doesn't need to understand everything on the technical side, but they need to know enough to provide effective oversight, and need to be able to ask questions and get appropriate responses in order to understand as well. So the first thing to expect is not to necessarily understand everything, but be ready to ask questions. After that, expect to see the specific requirements addressed. The report will speak to specific areas of the information security program. 1. The risk assessment process and results. 2. Third-party management, what's new and what's risky. 3. Results of testing, both internal, such as incident response program testing, and external, such as audits and examinations. 4. Incidents pertaining to information security, such as security breaches or regulatory issues, and the response to them in the last year. And finally, 5. The recommendations for changes to improve the information security program. Because after all, our ultimate goal here is to continually improve the program. And this finishes up the annual information security report to the board, what to expect. As always, thank you for listening to this Infotex presentation.